$26 trillion. That is the conservative floor of what is being liquidated as you watch this. While the mainstream media was fixated on political theater and celebrity scandals, the most important agreement of the last 50 years, the deal that allowed America to become an untouchable empire, just expired. The 50-year-old Petrodollar pact is dead. For half a century, every drop of oil on this planet had to be bought in one currency, the US dollar. This wasn't a choice, it was a mandate. It was the petrodollar, the invisible thread that allowed Washington to print infinite money while the rest of the world worked for it. But as of February 2026, that thread has snapped. Saudi Arabia has officially ended its exclusive deal with Washington. They are now accepting yuan, euros, and even gold-backed digital assets for the world's most precious commodity. While the news focused on inflation data, the real money was fleeing the dollar in a violent $7.3 trillion exodus that took less than 48 hours to ignite. If you think this is just a Middle East problem, you are already caught in the trap. Because when the petrodollar dies, your savings, your home value, and your future are the collateral damage. To understand why your grocery bills are doubling and your house is becoming unaffordable, you have to look past the surface. The petrodollar was never just about oil, it was about recycling. Imagine a global membership fee. Because oil was priced only in dollars, every country, from India to Germany, had to keep massive piles of US dollars in their central banks just to keep their lights on. But they didn't just hold the cash, they used it to buy US Treasury bonds. This was the exorbitant privilege. It allowed the US to run massive debts and fund a global military without ever going bankrupt. Why? Because the world had to buy our debt to buy oil. It was a closed loop, a perfect machine. But in 2026, the machine has reversed. It's called de-dollarization. Think of it like a game of musical chairs. But there are 200 players and only 10 chairs. When Saudi Arabia accepts other currencies, the global demand for dollars vanishes. Those trillions of excess notes are now flooding back to American shores like a financial tidal wave. This is why interest rates aren't coming down. The Fed isn't fighting inflation. They are fighting the collapse of demand for the dollar itself. To understand where this ends, we have to look at June 8, 1974. America was in a death spiral. Gold reserves were gone. Inflation was 12%. The dollar was a dying king. President Nixon's Treasury Secretary William Simon landed in Riyadh with a desperate secret mission. The deal was simple but brutal. America would provide absolute military protection and high-tech weaponry to the House of Saud. In exchange, Saudi Arabia would price all oil exclusively in dollars and invest those dollars back into U.S. debt. This protection for paper deal saved the American way of life for 50 years. But history is a cold judge. Every global reserve currency, from the Roman denarius to the British pound, lasted exactly until the moment its protection was no longer needed or no longer feared. Today, the Saudi crown prince is no longer waiting for a phone call from Washington. He is making them to Beijing and Moscow. The shield is cracking. Project the data forward 12 months. This is where the anxiety becomes a reality. As BRICS Plus expands to control 47% of global oil production, the dollar's share of global reserves is projected to hit a 40-year low. If the dollar loses its status as the only oil currency, the US can no longer export its inflation. What happens next? The repricing of reality. If interest rates stay at 7 or 8% because no one wants to buy our debt, the unprepared will watch their home equity evaporate. Commercial real estate will crumble. Your 401k will be worth the same amount of dollars, but those dollars will buy 40% less than they did today. But for the prepared, the sovereign individuals who moved into hard assets, physical gold, and decentralized systems, this isn't a crisis. It is the greatest wealth transfer in human history. The wealth isn't disappearing, it's just changing hands. We aren't just watching a financial crisis, we are watching the end of an era of free money. The age of the blank check is over. The world is running out of trust in the medium we use to trade. The liquidation has already crossed the $26 trillion mark in shadow markets. The smart money has already exited. The lights are flickering and the doors are being locked. Most people will wait for the news to tell them what to do. By then, the price of entry will be too high. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Subscribe to see the pattern.